friends, my name is AJ and welcome back to my book nook and welcome back to another episode of my Canadian Author Spotlight. Today we are going to be covering a newer book. It just came out, I believe this month or the previous month, and I'm really excited to talk about it because it has been blowing people away recently, and myself included in that. And that is Iron Widow by Xiran Jay Zhao. Before we dive into it, let's talk a little bit about the author. Xiran Jay Zhao is a first-generation immigrant to Canada from small-town China, and they currently reside in British Columbia. They're a recent graduate from Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, and this is their debut novel. However, previous to this work, they have done some other work regarding media and writing, and you can see some of that on their YouTube channel where they talk a lot about Chinese culture and history and representation within media. It's a really cool channel, and I've learned a lot from it, so I think that you should definitely take a look if you enjoyed the book. So let's dive right into Iron Widow. Before we get into it though, I do just want to apologize in advance if I pronounce any of the names wrong. I did look up a pronunciation guide and found some videos of the author pronouncing the names. It's just so I could do my best, but if I do stumble over, I apologize and please do correct me. Iron Widow is a science fiction retelling of the story of the only female emperor of China, Wu Zetian. This story reimagines Zetian as an 18-year-old girl who lives in a world where these giant aliens live outside of the Great Wall, which protects their civilization. Humanity is protected by giant mechas that are piloted by a male pilot and his female concubine pilot. However, the females typically do not survive the trip. So when Zetian's sister is killed by one of the most famous pilots of these mechas, she decides to take matters into her own hands and enlist so that she can kill him herself and get revenge. After doing so, everything goes into chaos as a male pilot has never been killed by a female one before. So she's partnered with the top pilot, Li Shimin. He is a top pilot who is also known for murdering his entire family. She realized that with her power and his power combined, she may be able to discover all the secrets about the piloting system and take it down from the inside. This is such a good book. I have never read anything like it. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I'm a huge fantasy fan. I love these really cool and exciting and adventurous stories, and this is just such an amazing take on it. It takes some bits of Chinese culture through history and some Chinese legends. Some of the different mechas are based on these spirits, and I just thought that was such an interesting touch because it mixed so well with the sci-fi that it made it into something that I've really never seen before. Zetian is such a cool character to read from the perspective of. If you watched my previous video on the Hunger Games, you'll know that I wasn't really a big fan of Katniss in the first book. I didn't really find her interesting. I found her a bit irritating because while she was mad at the world, there wasn't really a lot of logic to the way she was written, in my opinion, and I just didn't think she was written very well. Zetian is everything that Katniss could have been and more. She's angry, she is fierce, she's for sure an anti-hero, which we'll get into in a minute, but she is written so well that you can really sympathize with her even when she's doing these terrible things that make you think, maybe I shouldn't be sympathizing with her, but you get why she's doing them, and she's so interesting to read from. I love reading from the perspective of an antagonist, and like I said, she is a big anti-hero, you know? She for sure is fighting for the right reasons, kind of the sexism of the system and the patriarchy and how all these women are just sacrificed against their will for what is the greater good of humanity. But the way she does it is not necessarily very good. She has no qualms with murdering anyone who gets in her way, and she does some pretty awful things to people to try and get answers from them. But like I said, it's very interesting to read. I really like that we get to have this strong woman who isn't necessarily a really good person, because I feel like we don't get that a lot. I feel like most anti-heroes that you see are typically men. I feel like you don't get a lot of female ones. And when you do, it's typically revolving around a man. Looking at you, Suicide Squad. Going into some of the other characters, Ximin, the pilot that she is partnered with, who is the best pilot out there, he is such an awesome character too. I am a big fan of characters who seem really tough on the outside, but are actually just genuinely really good people who typically get judged for something that was taken out of context. I really love that. I love those kinds of characters where you kind of get to peel back these layers of them and get to know them a little bit better, because I think that makes them more interesting. The fact that they seem so gruff and angry on the outside, and the more layers that you take off, the more you realize that they're just kind of protecting themselves with that armor that they've put around themselves. On characters that I don't think lived up to their full potential, I do need to discuss her childhood best friend, Igud. He is not my favorite character. I couldn't really find myself rooting for him, and I don't really know what it was, but it just felt like something was missing, and I couldn't really say what did it for me. Maybe it's just the fact that I never end up rooting for the childhood love. I always end up rooting for the new guy whenever you have love triangles showing up. But there was just something about him. I couldn't put my finger on it. I think he could have had so much more potential if we had dived into his history a little bit more, but we didn't really get that. So I'm hoping that maybe if they end up writing a second book, or they end up releasing some more information about the characters, that we'll get to learn a little bit more about him. Like I said, I just feel like there was potential there, but I just didn't feel like I could connect to him as well as I could with Zetian and Ximin. Moving away from the characters and into the world building, I thought that that was absolutely phenomenal. The way that the characters and the world was introduced was done very gradually, but also very well. You don't want a lot of exposition in your story, but I feel like pushing it off and being too slow with the details can also be bad, and the balance here was so good. There were bits and pieces that kept being brought up, and we got to learn more about the system and the mechas, the chrysalises as they're called, as Zetian was learning about them as well. The sexism of the system was also shown very well, I think. They were showing that it wasn't just the men who were imposing these issues upon women. There were other women who were also imposing these issues, and sometimes that was because they also felt trapped by the system, but sometimes we were shown that it wasn't because they felt trapped by the system. It's just because they wanted to put this person down instead of supporting other women. And I thought that that was a really nice touch, because I feel like oftentimes when you have a character like Zetian fighting against the patriarchy, you often either have all these other women who are so weak because they're like they're not gonna do anything because they're also victims of the patriarchy, or you'll have all these women who are also your enemies, and I don't think that that's the case. You know, you're gonna have these women who are gonna be supporting other women, and I think that that's what we need to be doing, but in the other cases, you are gonna have some that have been raised in this system, and they truly believe in it, and they're also gonna be imposing it, which is a choice, you know? You can unlearn things, and I think that that was an important thing to show. This book is just so exciting. It's so action-packed. There are so many moments of these big fight scenes between the mechas and the aliens, and you know, we've got these class conflicts. We've got people who are now afraid of her because she's killed a pilot, so even when she's not fighting aliens, she's still fighting someone because someone's not happy with her. And it's just so well done. There's so many twists and turns. Even up until the final pages of the book, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It's just so well written and so exciting and just such a good read. Before I close out, I do just want to talk a little bit about the formatting of this book, because it's the little things that make me happy. So first and foremost, the chapters all have names to them, which is such a little thing, but it makes me so happy because I feel like chapters don't have names anymore, and I miss it, and it gets nostalgic for me. The other thing that I really appreciate about this book and really respect is that on the first page, not the first page is, you know, the title and the, you know, details about publishing, but The page before the book starts, there's actually a full trigger warning for all the things that you might have to be worried about. So it warns you about any scenes that are going to be, any sort of references to certain things that might be troubling to you. And I would definitely say that if you are someone who can be triggered by certain things when reading books, to look up what the trigger warnings are for this one, because it gets very, very dark at certain points. And it honestly surprised me. There were moments where I was like, oh, okay, we're going there. But it's such a good book, so if you think that you can get past that, I definitely say to give it a read, give it a shot. But I really appreciated that the trigger warnings were there. I don't think I've ever seen a book do that before. So that is my full opinion on the book, but let's talk about what my final thoughts are. As a debut novel, I think that this is so well done. It's so well written, it's so exciting. You can see the passion and the power in it. It's such a dark and powerful and adventurous book, and you can really see how much love went into it while writing it. You can really see how much they enjoyed writing this, how much passion they put into this, and how much work they put into this. It has such strong and complex characters, a twisting story that works really well, and you get introduced to little bits of culture and history from China as they're reimagined into this new sci-fi world. Overall, I just cannot wait to see what they do next, because this book was definitely a wonderful debut into the world of publishing. Anyways, my friends, that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit that subscribe button and stick around, or go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And as always, I have linked the socials for the author Xiran Jay Zhao in the description below. You can check out all their socials as well as their website down there and give them some support, as well as give some support to Iron Widow if this sounded interesting to you. And as always, if you have any Canadian authors that you think are underrated and you think I should give a shout out to on my Canadian Author Spotlight series, please let me know in the comments. I really do need some ideas. It's harder than you'd think to find underrated authors. And let me know, have you read Iron Widow and did you have the same opinions as me, or have you not read it and this made you want to read it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation with all of you. But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see all of you lovely people in the next video. Bye!